What's up, Fisherman Fanatics? Just wanted to bring you a quick video today on sponge filters, and the only reason that I am covering sponge filters, and I'm sure they've been covered a million times before, is just because, again, I'm trying to make sure everyone's educated. If there are newer hobbyists that are coming to the channel, I do want to take care of them as well as the more experienced fish keepers. So sponge filters come in a variety of different shapes and sizes, and all of these different parameters are included with them, and there's quite a few to choose from. You can make them yourself, you can purchase them on Amazon's one place to go. And they're just a simple form of filtration. They do both biological and mechanical filtration. The beautiful thing about it is, as you can see in this picture, there's a tube that runs up. There's always going to be a tube that runs up. The reason for this is that the air supply will go down that tube and create a vacuum. The way it works is air pushes down, and because there's nowhere for the air to essentially go, it circulates back up to the top. In doing so, it creates a vacuum. Now this will pull water through your sponge, which provides your mechanical filtration. So what this means basically is that it allows you to filtrate elements out of your water, such as additional foods. There's higher concentration of a certain element in there you don't want. It can pull that in there. The sponge will retain whatever gets pulled through it, so you want to make sure you clean it out depending on how dirty it is. Some clean it out once a month, some every other month, some every 3 months. Others don't need to touch theirs for a year. It all depends on your setup. It all depends on exactly how well you maintain your tanks and the water quality. Now, the other thing that it does is creates biological filtration, meaning that it provides a surface for beneficial bacteria to grow. Now what this means is that there's a beneficial bacteria that will eliminate ammonia in your water and nitrites in your water and convert them into nitrates. Ammonia and nitrites are both harmful for fish as well as nitrates. However, nitrates are extremely less harmful, and you can have a way higher quality of nitrates in your water versus ammonia or nitrites. This doesn't mean you're not going to change the water or that nitrates are safe. It just means that the fish can handle those better than it can ammonia or nitrites. Now, using a sponge filter allows you to find the perfect balance. You can see that there's different styles of sponge filters depending on the size of your tank. You can make these yourself. There's a ton of do-it-yourself videos out there on how to make them. It's basically a PVC pipe with some holes drilled into the bottom, an end cap placed onto the bottom of the PVC pipe. Glue that to a ceramic tile or something that's going to weigh it down. You can pick up a mesh sponge, place it directly over the holes that you have drilled into your PVC pipe. Now keep in mind you want the holes as high as the sponge, meaning if you have holes in the bottom of your pipe to 4 inches up, you want your sponge to cover from the bottom of your pipe to 4 inches up. That way, when the air is being pressed up, it's creating the vacuum and it's sucking in water through those holes, it's automatically going to go through the sponge, which is what you need it to do in order to filtrate. So this can be done, and then you would simply just place an air stone directly down the tube at the very bottom, and like I said before, as the air gets pressed up, it's going to create a vacuum, which in turn will suck in water through the sponges, and you have your filtration. It's a cheap, effective way to filtrate your tank if you don't want to go out and spend, $40, $50, $60, $70 on a hang-on bag filter, which I also have a picture of here. The hang-on bag filters are great. The one that you see is a Penguin 350 Marineland. It has 2 bio wheels. It has 4 filter cartridge slots. It can filter up to 80 gallons without a problem. It does 350 gallons per minute. Meaning with my 60-gallon tank, I'm cycling the water in that tank 6 times per hour. That pretty much means that there's really no chance of anything really harmful getting in there that's going to stick around for very long. It can happen, don't get me wrong, and there are crashes that happen because of a change in the environment, an ammonia spike, a nitrite spike. Those things do happen, but they're going to be a lot less frequent if you make sure you pay attention to what you're doing and you do have your tank filter correctly. The other thing that both of these filters will do, a sponge filter versus a hang-on bag filter, is create flow, which I always tend to get air pumps that have a larger output than the tank would demand. So if you go and you look at air pumps and it says, oh, this will do for a 10-gallon tank. If you're going to use it for a 10-gallon tank, is it going to work? Yes, it will. But I'd rather get a 20-gallon air pump just to make sure that I have enough flow. What I would also do is not just put the air pump on, but I would get a control valve so I can control how much flow goes in there. If it's turned all the way down, it's not going to get any flow. If it's open all the way, it's going to get 20 gallons worth of flow. It will release X amount of liters of air per minute. Now, the reason I do this is to make sure that if I have like my guppy tank and they like less flow, I have the ability to turn that down a little bit. If they have fry and I notice that the fry are struggling because the flow is too high, I can turn it down a little bit. If you buy just a straight air pump, you do not have this ability in most cases. Some do have them built in, don't get me wrong. But for the general ones that we would buy in a any type of pet store, you're going to notice that majority of them do not have that control valve. So I pick one up. They're only a couple bucks. I install it. It's real easy. Wherever the line's at, you just simply cut it in half. You insert your valve. You don't need any extra line. It takes probably 5 seconds to do. It's a real simple process. And this gives me complete control over air in my tank. This also helps with the sponge filters, because if you increase the volume of air that's getting pushed through it, you're increasing the suction through your sponge. If you decrease it, you're decreasing the suction. So this can also help adjust exactly how much filtration you want in your tank versus how much flow you want in your tank. So it's essentially complete control over the atmosphere. If you notice something's not going right, you can tweak it a little bit to make sure you get it fine-tuned. This is part of the reason I like using the control valves, is because it does help. Now, I do have a hang-on back filter on the 60 gallon at the moment. I do plan on switching over to sponge filters on that tank eventually. But as of right now, you guys have seen my 60 gallon setup. You've seen videos of the 60 gallon. The water in there is crystal clear, and that's with the 350 hang-on back. Not saying that they don't work, not saying that they work better. They just simply do work. That's all. Now, the one downfall to hang-on back filters is that they do die out. They are a motor. Parts and pieces are moving in there. With wear and tear, it's going to break down. And at any given point in time, your hang-on back filter may just crash, and you wouldn't know it. If you have sponge filters, you'll know immediately, hey, there's no air in my tank. I have no filtration. So it's just another way of being able to observe what's going on in your tank and rectify the situation as quickly as possible. It is much cheaper to buy a smaller new air pump than it is to buy a hang-on back filter. And most of us, if you've been in the hobby for a while, are going to have extra air pumps laying around. You'll probably have extra hang-on back filters laying around. Tons of extra airline tube. You know, if you're newer to the hobby and you don't have these things, it's a much cheaper alternative to a hang-on back filter. And again, if something were to go wrong, you immediately can fix it. You notice right away. If you have air stones in your tank and your hang-on back filter stops working, you're still going to see flow, and you're going to assume in most cases, if you're not really observant, that everything's still working perfectly fine, even though your water's not being filtered. So it really does help just to know exactly what's going on in your tank, and it's easier to see with the sponge filter, in my opinion. Now, I don't believe that there's any true drawbacks of using a sponge versus using a hang-on back filter. I mean, the few things I've mentioned, you know, if an air pump goes out, it's a lot cheaper to replace an air pump than it is a hang-on back filter. For the sponges, they both do their job the way they're supposed to. They do filter out the tanks, and in most cases, they will do a good job. And the general rule of thumb is you want to cycle your water between 4 to 5 times per hour. Some people will tell you 3 to 4, some will tell you 5 to 6. General rule of thumb is between 4 to 5 is a safe number. That way, if you're newer to the hobby, you know, and it's cycling 4 to 5 times, you're getting good filtration. If you're more experienced in the hobby, and you know what you're doing, 3 to 4 times is perfectly fine. You know, it's just a happy medium. I filter mine 6 times simply because that was the hang-on back filter that I got. It was on sale. I think I paid $20 for it instead of $60. And I built that tank from the ground up, 60-gallon tank with stand, a 12-inch bubble wand, the Marineland 350 hang-on back filter, submersible 300-watt heater, airline and tubing, thermometer, gravel, plants, everything included less the fish, for approximately $300. And the only reason why I bring up how much I spent on it, which I won't do often, is to show you that if you pay attention to what's going on, you can get really, really good deals on larger fish tanks. So if you're getting into the hobby and you have a 10-gallon or 20-gallon or 30-gallon, you're looking to upgrade, there's dollar per gallon sales all the time. You can pick those up. If you pay close attention around Christmas time, there's usually amazing deals all over the place for fish tanks, which is also a really good time to get into it. I paid $200 for my stand and my 60-gallon tank together. I got 2 LED strip lights with it. I got the glass top as well as the tank and the stand for $200. The hang-on back filter, like I said, was about $20. The air pump that we have on the bottom is a Tetra 100 Whisper, again regulated for 100 gallons. But I like to go big. That only cost me $20. And then I have, of course, my control valves on there, which is $2. The thermometer that I use is a relatively cheap one. It's a little glass stick-in one. It was like $4. You know, the plastic plants we already had laying around, so I didn't spend a whole lot on those. The heater I got, again, is a 300-watt heater. Amazing sale I found. I got it picked up for $10. So, I mean, you add all that up, it's $50 for the heater, the air pump, and the hang-on back filter. The bubble one was, I think, $8, so you're up to $58. Airline tubing, you know, a couple bucks, $60. Thermometers, $5, $65. You know, the plants that I have in there between the hornwort and the Ludwigia and the cherry hedge, I got all of that for probably 15 bucks total, and I'm up to $80. You know, the gravel I picked up from somebody I knew. Again, it was 80 pounds of gravel. I paid $20 for it. So exactly $100. I have plants, I have gravel, and I have every key element to a tank being cycled and started. It was $100 for 60 gallons. And if you are new to the hobby, you're going to probably see that bits and pieces together can cost quite a bit. And if you're more experienced in the hobby, you already know bits and pieces can cost quite a bit. When you think you're done, you see something else you want, or you realize you need, or a piece of equipment will go out, and the next thing you know, you're spending 50, 60 bucks. So just to get this tank fully functioning from the ground up, stand included with everything, it was exactly $300. If you look anywhere, Craigslist, online, Amazon, eBay, you'll notice that people are charging for a 30-gallon setup with everything included about $100. 50s, 55s, they usually run between $300 to $400. If you're lucky, you'll get that with everything. Most cases, it's just basic. You might get a filter, you might get a light, you'll get the tank, and that's a canopy, perhaps, a top. Not even a canopy, just a glass top. If you're lucky. You still have to get the gravel, you still have to get the plants, you still have to get everything else. You know, the bigger you get, the more expensive the tanks are. It's just the way it is. So, the reality of the situation is, every little bit you can save helps. Sponge filters are extremely cheap. They're a very inexpensive alternative to hang-on back filtration systems. They work just as well. They have biological mechanical filtration. You have absolutely no worries on whether or not it's going to work. You'll see in any of your local pet stores, they usually use sponge filters. Most of the more experienced hobbyists are going to be using sponge filters. They're just an inexpensive way to filter your tank, and it's effective. It's extremely effective. But I don't want to ramble too long on this topic because, like I said, it's probably been covered a million times and beat to death. I just wanted to make sure that if there are newer hobbyists to the channel, that you understand there are alternatives to everything that you do. If you guys have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. I will do my best to answer them. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe because it does help us out tremendously. And as always, happy fish keeping.